Hi, everybody. This is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny, corona-filled Colorado. Still in my office, still working hard, although I'm the only one here. So I don't think I'll catch anything in the office and following standard quarantine protocols, farm to office and back. But I did want to make a video today to talk about deadlines and delays and these things. I read some threads on the Reddit, and we're always transparent. We're always open. So I'll address the questions that come up. You see, what is releasing soon is the Byron reboot. And the Byron reboot is the culmination of about 18 months of engineering effort. Let's talk about the history of the project, and we can kind of walk our way to where we're at today and why things have taken so long. Cardano was very honest when it started. We said we're a scientific project, and a scientific project means you do science. And science is unpredictable. It takes time. Today, right now, we have a global pandemic that everybody in the world knows is going to kill millions of people. It's shutting the entire world down. So why don't we have a vaccine? We have several vaccine candidates. Why don't we just go around and just start injecting people by mass with these candidates? Hope maybe they work, maybe they don't work. We see a lot of people running to chloroquine because a single study with 40 people says it has some benefit. Chloroquine is not a safe drug. It can cause quite severe problems for people. Azithromycin treats bacterial infections, has nothing to do with viruses. People cling to hope and they want something now. The point of science is to remove human beings from the process and to follow a systematic way of thinking so that you can resolve problems. Cardano was never a project that signed up to build yet another cryptocurrency. We have them. We have Bitcoin, we have Ethereum, we have EOS, we have IOTA, we have Tezos, we have hundreds of options. If we entered into market and the only thing we offered were smart contracts and a good consensus protocol and a good ledger, we'd just be one voice among the 3,000 that are speaking. And how do we get ahead? Cardano was a project that said it would bear the burdens of scientific due diligence on the entire industry. So we said we will assume nothing. We will start from ground, from first principles in 2015. What is a ledger? What are the accounting models? How do you write a smart contract programming language? What requirements must it have? Now, this process is methodical and slow. Everybody knew that going into it. And we said it straight up, peer review, evidence-based software. And so we started in 2015. It was 2017 before we released the product. Now, we learned an enormous amount in those 2 years. We learned a lot about architecture. We learned a lot about how to write a cryptocurrency. But we recognized that it would be inconceivable to wait 10 years or 20 years for a product to actually hit market. So we needed to put in iteration. We needed to put in the ability to ship products quickly. So we decided to embrace a two-prong approach in 2017. One, we hired a group of people to take a fork of Haskell Bitcoin and put Ouroboros on top of it and build out basically a version 1, similar to what we were trying to do and accomplish with the incentivized testnet. That group of people released the very first version of Cardano, the Byron release in September of 2017. Now, the hope was that a parallel team could start from first principles and build a perfect cryptocurrency. And that would take 3 or 4 years to complete. So that group was led by well-typed Duncan Coutts and his people, who are among the most skilled engineers the world has. Meanwhile, the other group was led by a firm known as Serakel. Now, unfortunately, not everything worked out the way we hoped. The software that we released in September of 2017 was laden with technical debt, and it had a lot of small design flaws, which at the time we were building it were difficult to catch, but certainly became more than evident as we got closer to the release. So here's what happened. We spent all of 2018, most of that year, trying to resolve and fix something that we assumed could be iterated to a point where it was stable. So this introduced the first wave of delays. Our belief was that we could have put Ouroboros Classic with a delegation system on top of the Serakel code base, while well-typed working with its skunkworks would continue building the evidence-based software version of Cardano, which would be the permanent protocol that would ship in 2020. So what did we do? We started pulling resources from the other team into the first team in an attempt to correct the software, clean up the software. Unfortunately, the software was written in a way that made maintenance of it very difficult. So in September of 2018, we decided to pivot, and we said, we're no longer going to try to remediate this software. We valued delivery. So we said, we'll spin up another team. That was the team that I led with Cardano Rust that delivered Icarus to market, which became Yoroi, which is our single most successful and fastest adopted product in our ecosystem, and also fastest built product because we built Icarus in 4 months' time. We'll take that team and have them build a parallel, very agile, very rapidly produced version of Cardano so we can replace what we were planning on doing with Sarakel, so we can bring things to market faster. Now, that team was successful. In 2019, we shipped the incentivized testnet, which if we were just another cryptocurrency would be Shelley. It's stable, it's decentralized, it has hundreds of operating nodes, its network uptime is over 99% at this point, it's secure, it's working well, it's very performant. In fact, we have a path to over 1,000 transactions per second with the incentivized testnet as it stands today, in market today. That product is running today. It's not just another wallet, it's a full cryptocurrency. If we wanted to call that Shelley and put Shelley on it, it would deliver the promise of Ouroboros Genesis, our wallet backend, and all the other things that we've spent years building. But we have committed ourselves as a project, and we made a social contract with our community, with the scientific community, that we would follow an evidence-based approach, which is why we're working on the Haskell side. And it takes a bit more time. Now, these people didn't sit on their shoes for years. They worked thousands and thousands of commits every week, months and months and months and months of hard work writing specifications, sprint after sprint, release after release. You can see this code. There's no trust Charles Hoskinson here. It's in our GitHub repositories. You can physically see a chain of custody of developer after developer, commit after commit after commit, and the dozens of repositories on our GitHub publicly there. And you can see that that software has evolved from a proof of concept to a production grade piece of software. We are not Cardano. We ship every single week. Every week, the incentivized testnet ships. We cut releases all the time, usually 2-3 a month for the wallet backend. Daedalus cuts releases all the time. And even the Cardano node, which is being built with evidence-based software, has been maintaining a bi-weekly release cadence. So we are now in a position where we've moved beyond the slow waterfall processes of formal methods, which have historically laden the industry for 40 years, and moved it into a rapid release cycle. No other software company in the world has done that the way we have done it. And we are getting to the end of an era. The Byron reboot isn't just another release. And that's what's going to happen is when we release it, all of our critics are going to say the Byron reboot is just another release. It's just another thing. It's not. It's the culmination of 18 months of hardcore work completely rebuilding Cardano from the ground up. And then at that point, we are masters of that code. And every 2 weeks, we can add to it. There are no more gigantic monolithic releases. We had to rebuild everything to get to this particular point. This was never the original intent. Our hope was that we'd have an iterative code base, and at some point at the very end, we'd hard fork to the evidence-based code base, and that code base would be the one to ride for the next 50 years. Unfortunately, the first attempt didn't work, but that didn't slow down or stop the second attempt, the evidence-based attempt, and Byron is that attempt. That Byron reboot is going to be the biggest release we've ever done as a community, as an ecosystem. It's built with evidence. It's built with quick check. We found hundreds of bugs using formal methods that we were able to resolve before we released it. This is the point of what we've done. Now, in terms of when it's going to release, imminently, like very soon. I promised the community that Aparna is going to announce that, but it's now at a point where features are not being added. We're just resolving bugs and pulling all three pieces together. Daedalus, the wallet backend, and the node, and those pulled togethers are successful. We're able to restore wallets. We're able to send transactions. We're able to process blocks. So all the things on our checklist that we need to do, we're able to do. So now it's just a question of when does Aparna feel comfortable to do that? And that's imminent, very soon. At that point, everything thereafter is no longer a monolithic release. There is no waterfall anymore. It's gone. It's dead. It died a year ago. The problem is there's latency in these things. For example, today we have vaccine candidates for coronavirus. And no matter how bad the world wants it, there's a process that has to be followed. And you can speed that process up a little bit, but we're still only going to get a vaccine in 2021, despite the profound economic consequences of that reality. And that's the fastest it's ever been done. Similarly, there was latency in the processes and the procedures that we adopted. And that latency we weren't meant to feel because we were supposed to have a different code base to work with. It didn't work out. Now, if we compare that with our competitors, they've had a litany of issues. Major hacks that have lost hundreds of millions of dollars. Some networks have had to shut themselves down. The fact that they can makes you think, well, are they really a cryptocurrency or not? And there have been years of delays in major projects throughout our space, from F2 to Filecoin and so forth. The problem is that the end user usually does not see the product until you get to where we're at today, Byron reboot. That would be the entry point. And then when we talk about Shelley and Basho and Voltaire, that's new stuff to them. You guys got along right in the beginning, right when we're talking about the science, right when we're an R&D project. And every single major company, Samsung, Microsoft, Google, Apple, they have tons of R&D that they do. And that R&D is plagued with delays. It took 10 years to bring Natal to become Xbox Connect. It took about 8 years for the HoloLens to become a beta product. The LiDAR that's inside Apple's new phone coming out, that LiDAR took 6 years of development before they could actually bring it to the iPad Pro. You don't see that. You don't feel that. You don't start day one when they're talking about LiDAR. You see it when Tim Cook goes up on the stage and says, we have LiDAR now in our phones. Whereas today with us, you saw it right in the beginning when we were talking about it, right when we were writing the very first papers and then demanding, where is it, where is it, where is it? And I keep coming back to the vaccine research because it's the closest analogy. This is the first time the world gets to see the wizard behind the curtain. They get to see the scientific process in action. They get to see what it actually takes to deliver something based on evidence to market. And no matter how bad the world wants it, they're not going to get it until it's done. And it's the same situation for us. But here's what happens. When it's shipped, it changes everything. The world gets to go back to normal in the case of the vaccine. For us, it means we succeeded in the most significant scientific and research project in our space's history. Everything about this project has been carrying an enormous burden on its back. Even Haskell itself, we had to make better. We had to correct bad libraries. We had to work on cross-compilation so Haskell could easily compile the JavaScript and WebAssembly. We had to find ways to get Haskell to play nice on Windows, which took 2 years of effort. This was a colossal effort. And the people working on this are spending the best years of their careers. Do you think that they want to wake up and say it's just another project? Their reputation associated with a failure? No. If you look at the commits, if you look at the dedication, you look at the things that we're doing, you see the passion, the excitement. You see people working on the weekends. You see people working on holidays. So we as a community, Hi, everybody. This is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny, corona-filled Colorado. Still in my office, still working hard, although I'm the only one here. So I don't think I'll catch anything in the office and following standard quarantine protocols, farm to office and back. But I did want to make a video today to talk about deadlines and delays and these things. I read some threads on the Reddit, and we're always transparent. We're always open. So I'll address the questions that come up. You see, what is releasing soon is the Byron reboot. And the Byron reboot is the culmination of about 18 months of engineering effort. Let's talk about the history of the project, and we can kind of walk our way to where we're at today and why things have taken so long. Cardano was very honest when it started. We said we're a scientific project, and a scientific project means you do science. And science is unpredictable. It takes time. Today, right now, we have a global pandemic that everybody in the world knows is going to kill millions of people. It's shutting the entire world down. So why don't we have a vaccine? We have several vaccine candidates. Why don't we just go around and just start injecting people by mass with these candidates? Hope maybe they work, maybe they don't work. We see a lot of people running to chloroquine because a single study with 40 people says it has some benefit. Chloroquine is not a safe drug. It can cause quite severe problems for people. Azithromycin treats bacterial infections, has nothing to do with viruses. People cling to hope and they want something now. The point of science is to remove human beings from the process and to follow a systematic way of thinking so that you can resolve problems. Cardano was never a project that signed up to build yet another cryptocurrency. We have them. We have Bitcoin, we have Ethereum, we have EOS, we have IOTA, we have Tezos, we have hundreds of options. If we entered into market and the only thing we offered were smart contracts and a good consensus protocol and a good ledger, we'd just be one voice among the 3,000 that are speaking. And how do we get ahead? Cardano was a project that said it would bear the burdens of scientific due diligence on the entire industry. So we said we will assume nothing. We will start from ground, from first principles in 2015. What is a ledger? What are the accounting models? How do you write a smart contract programming language? What requirements must it have? Now, this process is methodical and slow. Everybody knew that going into it. And we said it straight up, peer review, evidence-based software. And so we started in 2015. It was 2017 before we released the product. Now, we learned an enormous amount in those 2 years. We learned a lot about architecture. We learned a lot about how to write a cryptocurrency. But we recognized that it would be inconceivable to wait 10 years or 20 years for a product to actually hit market. So we needed to put in iteration. We needed to put in the ability to ship products quickly. So we decided to embrace a two-prong approach in 2017. One, we hired a group of people to take a fork of Haskell Bitcoin and put Ouroboros on top of it and build out basically a version 1, similar to what we were trying to do and accomplish with the incentivized testnet. That group of people released the very first version of Cardano, the Byron release in September of 2017. Now, the hope was that a parallel team could start from first principles and build a perfect cryptocurrency. And that would take 3 or 4 years to complete. So that group was led by well-typed Duncan Coutts and his people, who are among the most skilled engineers the world has. Meanwhile, the other group was led by a firm known as Serakel. Now, unfortunately, not everything worked out the way we hoped. The software that we released in September of 2017 was laden with technical debt, and it had a lot of small design flaws, which at the time we were building it were difficult to catch, but certainly became more than evident as we got closer to the release. So here's what happened. We spent all of 2018, most of that year, trying to resolve and fix something that we assumed could be iterated to a point where it was stable. So this introduced the first wave of delays. Our belief was that we could have put Ouroboros Classic with a delegation system on top of the Serakel code base, while well-typed working with its skunkworks would continue building the evidence-based software version of Cardano, which would be the permanent protocol that would ship in 2020. So what did we do? We started pulling resources from the other team into the first team in an attempt to correct the software, clean up the software. Unfortunately, the software was written in a way that made maintenance of it very difficult. So in September of 2018, we decided to pivot and we said, we're no longer going to try to remediate this software. We valued delivery. So we said, we'll spin up another team. That was the team that I led with Cardano Rust that delivered Icarus to market, which became Yoroi, which is our single most successful and fastest adopted product in our ecosystem, and also fastest built product because we built Icarus in 4 months' time. We'll take that team and have them build a parallel, very agile, very rapidly produced version of Cardano so we can replace what we were planning on doing with Serakel, so we can bring things to market faster. Now, that team was successful. In 2019, we shipped the incentivized testnet, which if we were just another cryptocurrency would be Shelley. It's stable. It's decentralized. It has hundreds of operating nodes. Its network uptime is over 99% at this point. It's secure. It's working well. It's very performant. In fact, we have a path to over 1,000 transactions per second, with the incentivized testnet as it stands today, in market today. That product is running today. It's not just another wallet. It's a full cryptocurrency. If we wanted to call that Shelley and put Shelley on it, it would deliver the promise of Ouroboros Genesis, our wallet backend, and all the other things that we've spent years building. But we have committed ourselves as a project, and we made a social contract with our community, with the scientific community, that we would follow an evidence-based approach, which is why we're working on the Haskell side. And it takes a bit more time. Now, these people didn't sit on their shoes for years. They worked thousands and thousands of commits every week, months and months and months and months of hard work writing specifications, sprint after sprint, release after release. You can see this code. There's no trust Charles Hoskinson here. It's in our GitHub repositories. You can physically see a chain of custody of developer after developer, commit after commit after commit, and the dozens of repositories on our GitHub publicly there. And you can see that that software has evolved from a proof of concept to a production grade piece of software. We are not Cardano. We ship every single week. Every week, the incentivized testnet ships. We cut releases all the time, usually 2-3 a month for the wallet backend. Daedalus cuts releases all the time. And even the Cardano node, which is being built with evidence-based software, has been maintaining a bi-weekly release cadence. So we are now in a position where we've moved beyond the slow waterfall processes of formal methods, which have historically laden the industry for 40 years, and moved it into a rapid release cycle. No other software company in the world has done that the way we have done it. And we are getting to the end of an era. The Byron reboot isn't just another release. And that's what's going to happen is when we release it, all of our critics are going to say the Byron reboot is just another release. It's just another thing. It's not. It's the culmination of 18 months of hardcore work, completely rebuilding Cardano from the ground up. And then at that point, we are masters of that code. And every 2 weeks, we can add to it. There are no more gigantic monolithic releases. We had to rebuild everything to get to this particular point. This was never the original intent. Our hope was that we'd have an iterative code base, and at some point at the very end, we'd hard fork to the evidence-based code base, and that code base would be the one to ride for the next 50 years. Unfortunately, the first attempt didn't work, but that didn't slow down or stop the second attempt, the evidence-based attempt, and Byron is that attempt. That Byron reboot is going to be the biggest release we've ever done as a community, as an ecosystem. It's built with evidence. It's built with quick check. We found hundreds of bugs using formal methods that we were able to resolve before we released it. This is the point of what we've done. Now, in terms of when it's going to release, imminently, like very soon. I promised the community that Aparna is going to announce that, but it's now at a point where features are not being added. We're just resolving bugs and pulling all three pieces together, Daedalus, the wallet backend, and the node, and those pull togethers are successful. We're able to restore wallets. We're able to send transactions. We're able to process blocks. So all the things on our checklist that we need to do, we're able to do. So now it's just a question of when does Aparna feel comfortable to do that? And that's imminent, very soon. At that point, everything thereafter is no longer a monolithic release. There is no waterfall anymore. It's gone. It's dead. It died a year ago. The problem is there's latency in these things. For example, today we have vaccine candidates for coronavirus. And no matter how bad the world wants it, there's a process that has to be followed. And you can speed that process up a little bit, but we're still only going to get a vaccine in 2021, despite the profound economic consequences of that reality. And that's the fastest it's ever been done. Similarly, there was latency in the processes and the procedures that we adopted. And that latency we weren't meant to feel because we were supposed to have a different code base to work with. It didn't work out. Now, if we compare that with our competitors, they've had a litany of issues. Major hacks that have lost hundreds of millions of dollars. Some networks have had to shut themselves down. The fact that they can makes you think, well, are they really a cryptocurrency or not? And there have been years of delays in major projects throughout our space, from F2 to Filecoin and so forth. The problem is that the end user usually does not see the product until you get to where we're at today, Byron reboot. That would be the entry point. And then when we talk about Shelley and Basho and Voltaire, that's new stuff to them. You guys got along right in the beginning, right when we're talking about the science, right when we're an R&D project. And every single major company, Samsung, Microsoft, Google, Apple, they have tons of R&D that they do. And that R&D is plagued with delays. It took 10 years to bring Natal to become Xbox Connect. It took about 8 years for the HoloLens to become a beta product. The LiDAR that's inside Apple's new phone coming out, that LiDAR took 6 years of development before they could actually bring it to the iPad Pro. You don't see that. You don't feel that. You don't start day one when they're talking about LiDAR. You see it when Tim Cook goes up on the stage and says, we have LiDAR now in our phones. Whereas today with us, you saw it right in the beginning when we were talking about it, right when we were writing the very first papers and then demanding, where is it, where is it, where is it? And I keep coming back to the vaccine research because it's the closest analogy. This is the first time the world gets to see the wizard behind the curtain. They get to see the scientific process in action. They get to see what it actually takes to deliver something based on evidence to market. And no matter how bad the world wants it, they're not going to get it until it's done. And it's the same situation for us. But here's what happens. When it's shipped, it changes everything. The world gets to go back to normal in the case of the vaccine. For us, it means we succeeded in the most significant scientific and research project in our space's history. Everything about this project has been carrying an enormous burden on its back. Even Haskell itself, we had to make better. We had to correct bad libraries. We had to work on cross-compilation so Haskell could easily compile the JavaScript and WebAssembly. We had to find ways to get Haskell to play nice on Windows, which took 2 years of effort. This was a colossal effort. And the people working on this are spending the best years of their careers. Do you think that they want to wake up and say it's just another project? Their reputation associated with a failure? No. If you look at the commits, if you look at the dedication, you look at the things that we're doing, you see the passion and the excitement. You see people working on the weekends. You see people working on holidays. So we as a community have held together. And another important thing is in November, outside of IOHK, Emergo, and the CF, there was no one in our community that knew how to operate and run Cardano as a network. Now we have thousands of people just 100 days later in our Telegram channels who actually understand how to run the software and independent of our organizations actually run the ecosystem. We have hundreds of stake pool operators. I asked the stake pool operators to make videos. They're coming in every week. Great videos, everyday people, stay-at-home moms to technologists, big operations, small operations. They know how to run our software now. And if we ever went away, they could actually run the network. That's called decentralization. This was not the case 100 days ago. And 100 more days, how much more decentralized do you think we're going to be? We will have smart contracts. We will be fully decentralized before the end of this year. We will have governance before the end of this year. And our network will be quite scalable before the end of this year. These are the fruits of years of scientific research. Our critics never mention a single one of our papers. A, because they can't understand them. And B, they tell a story of people who are very disciplined, very systematic, working every single day very hard to try to do something different. That's the key word here, different, new, exciting. It took years of effort for Bitcoin to be constructed before anybody ever saw it. And we've been building it out in the open, Cardano, for everybody to see, taking brutal criticism along the way. Everything we do. For example, videos were made when we released the incentivized testnet saying, that's just Cardano. Only 5 people are working on it. Every other developer was totally ignored. Then one of our community members unfortunately said things like, the testnet is wrecked. It's not working very well. And it's true. It wasn't a very stable testnet when we first released it because it was an alpha product. Today, right now, it's 99% uptime. The product is working great. Things are wonderful. People have a much easier time running it. No one talks about it anymore. And now, of course, our critics ignore that testnet and the success there and the decentralization we've gained. And they've now pivoted back to the Haskell side. They will never be fair. They will never be honest. They will always say we're just a wallet. They will always say we're nothing. Because at the end of the day, their definition of success is the market cap high or not? If it's high, everybody's with us. If it's not high, we are a scam and a failure, and every single thing we have done is meaningless. Here's the reality. Those people are going to be gone in 3 to 5 years. They won't exist anymore. They'll go on to something else. Maybe they'll go and troll the next Game of Thrones, or maybe they'll go and become Rick and Morty fans. Who the fuck knows? I don't care about them. And I didn't build this product. I didn't start this ecosystem for them. I built this product to build something that would be around in 50 years. And so we have laid all the foundations and the seeds. Cardano permanently lives in the academy. Cardano permanently lives in the evidence-based software community. We have revolutionized every single component of our system, from how assets are issued to how our accounting model works, to how DSLs are integrated into our system, to how smart contracts are put into the system, to how our consensus protocol works. We solved proof of stake. It's not a trivial thing. It was the single hardest problem in our industry. We solved it, and we solved it in a 5-year time frame, which is a remarkable thing. We also figured out how to scale as far as we want. If we want to get to 1 million transactions per second, we can get there. We figured out how to do it. This was not a trivial thing. We did these things, and we did these things with principles. We did these things in the academy. We did these things through the peer review process. You do not have to trust me. The papers are there. They're open. They've been sent to conferences and accepted, which meant that they have merit, that people said these are worthy of the academic body. You can just trust the citations themselves. If you Google Ouroboros Classic, you'll see over 700 plus citations. The same for the GKL model, which is the foundation of the many things we've done. Our competitors are citing our papers, which meant there's something of merit there. It's worthwhile there. That means something. Those are the foundations of a decentralized society. And this is not easy. It's not something that you can just wave your hands and it magically materializes. You have to think not just about how do we get the code out now, you have to think about how do we build a process so the code will always get out. Even 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when the custodians are long gone. That is far more meaningful. And we've made great progress on that. So Byron reboot is imminent. And then after that, it's iterative, where we've merged both of those roadmaps, the fast roadmap and the slow methodical evidence roadmap. They've become one. And then Shelley will soon follow after that. And then Goguen soon after that, and so forth. These things are getting done. Teams are building in parallel. We are #1 for commits last year, and we'll probably be #1 for commits this year. But I take great umbrage to people who say, these are just delays are unacceptable. We can't delay anymore. You guys do nothing but delay. If you look at us in respect to our competitors, our industry as a whole, other big companies like Microsoft and, for example, with Windows Vista or Boeing with the 787, these things happen. They are commercial realities when you are working on new protocols, new science, new engines, and you're trying to innovate. The problem is you, the consumer, see it at the end of the tunnel. You saw it at the beginning of the tunnel. And looking at the vaccines for coronavirus, that's the greatest example of seeing it at the beginning of the tunnel. Everybody's going to see it. For example, what if these clinical trials for these vaccines are failures? There's a high probability of that. Many vaccines fail. Look at the malaria vaccines, the HIV vaccines, for example. We'd be back to the drawing board. And what does it mean? It means we don't actually get a coronavirus vaccine in 2021. We get it in 2022. Maybe 2023. It takes on average 3 to 4 years. So can we live in a global shutdown for that long? Imagine how much pressure are on those people. But that is the same reality that we live in today with Cardano. You guys are seeing the science real time with the engineering. The good news is the science is done. The protocols are designed. They've been de-risked. We know they work. 5 years of brilliant, incredibly hard, intensive thought has been rewarded with a template for a decentralized society. They're there. And then we had to learn how to write amazing software and bring a great team together in over 20 countries. 100 plus engineers have touched this code in this project throughout the years. Different systems. The GUI system, Daedalus, is a super complicated piece of software built on top of Electron. The wallet backend, written in Haskell, is a very complicated piece of software. I think that team is 8 people. The nodes, Jormungandr and the Haskell node, very complicated, completely new network stack in both cases, Polarcast in one and 106 pages of Haskell goodness based upon RENA. And again, these things took years to realize and to actually bring to market. Then they had to be tested on billions of potential configurations. Windows, Mac, Linux, all these different versions, all these different hardware configurations, all this different network software. And if it doesn't work for any one of these people, the first thing they do is go to Twitter or Reddit and tell us how it doesn't work for them and assume it doesn't work for everybody. So we had to build processes just like Microsoft, Google, or anybody else who builds software for the whole world to actually figure out how to fix those problems. We had to build a help desk, and we tirelessly sat down and processed tens of thousands of help desk tickets throughout the years, one after another, and tried to find ways to resolve problems for the vast majority of you. And many of you we have. We don't get any credit for that for our critics. So when you say delays, when you say commitments, when you say we're not in this game, we're just going to walk away, go fuck yourself. We're here. We're going to win this, and we're going to ship. And I'm tired. I'm very tired of the constant criticism of this. Every single week we release things. We have been transparent. We make videos. We make commits. You can clearly see the work being done. You can clearly see us building things. You can clearly see releases happening. And here's a news flash for you. When Shelley ships and Goguen ships, you're not going to see an immediate 50x on the price of ADA. We are in a global depression. The whole world is collapsing in on itself. The Federal Reserve just announced that it's going to print infinite money. There is no salvation here with what I can do. I can literally cure cancer, and the price of ADA is not going to massively go up. So if that is your primary concern, you need to leave crypto. We are here to build the foundations of a decentralized society. We are not here to make day traders rich. We are not here to influence the price of the markets in the short term. We're here to build infrastructure that is as useful today as it is 5 years, as it is 10 years for the social services we need. From whether the Senate wants to use it to vote, to how you register your property, to handling payments on a scale of billions of people, to redefining how transactions work, to the automation of regulation. These are the things that we care about every day. And the infrastructure we are building is here to do that. If you want to be part of that revolution, that's what ADA is all about. It is not here to make people rich. I've said this over and over and over and over and over again, and then people criticize us that it didn't make you rich. No cryptocurrency can. It is a hedge against a failing social system that we are now clearly, because of COVID, seeing for its truth. So things are coming, guys, and they will be released, and they will be released with principles and character, and we will be systematic as we've always been and stoic as we've always been. And our engineers will keep pushing hard, always. Believe that. And I'm going to tell you right now that what we are releasing is new. It's never been done before. We never forked anyone's code. We never took any ideas from anyone else. We started from the ground up and we built up. And you will see 1,000 forks of Cardano, just like you see 1,000 forks of Bitcoin in 10 years because of these ideas. The extended UTXO model alone could bring smart contracts in a responsible way to Bitcoin, and probably will. And the advancements we've made in consensus allow us now to run a global scale system off of 10 kilowatts of power. These are amazing advancements as a result of our scientific research. And we know they work. We've tested them. We validated them. It's just bringing them to market is a difficult proposition because not only do they have to be brought, they have to be maintained, and they have to be run by people who are not us if we are to achieve decentralization. And we're almost there. This is the year where it all comes together. I'm sorry it took so long, but you guys started just like all of us at the beginning of the tunnel instead of the end. You got to see the product in its infancy instead of a mature state. You're not used to that as consumers. Have some bloody patience. And please understand that there are good people who work every single day to solve these things and build these things. And we've been as open, transparent, and honest as we can be about everything. There's nothing to hide here. There's no closed source code. There's no, there's an emergency thing that we can pull out. It's all there. And if you're competent enough to read the code, you'd see it. But there's a competency gap. There's an expectation management gap here. And people get scared and they listen to FUD. Hold the faith, and we'll get this done. We will get this done. And what makes me so proud and so happy is there are many who have. There is nothing in life more satisfying than seeing the young and the old alike, unified on a common cause and actually running our software and being parts of our community and evangelizing, explaining. When we fail to explain a paper that came out, we see people in our community explain that, from Kronos to Hydra. When we don't show how to configure something, somebody in our community writes a tutorial or a guide. These are the foundations of a strong community. These are the foundations you require for a community to grow and become something of the scale and size of Bitcoin, and eventually of the scale and size of TCP/IP. We have these things here. We have great leadership. We have great people who are resilient and dogged, and they aren't motivated by the whims and wills of daily markets, and they're not motivated by FUD here or this hype here. They believe in what we're trying to accomplish, and these people will become, before the end of the year, leaders in our community. In some cases, given a democratic mandate, in some cases, given funding from the blockchain itself. And these people are the ones who are going to write the wave of smart contracts that make Cardano the top DeFi platform. These are the people that are going to run the thousands of stake pools inevitably, which will make Cardano the most decentralized financial operating system ever conceived. These are the people who will write the next wave of software, in addition to Emergo and IOHK and the other core entities that bootstrap the ecosystem. Those are the things you should care about. The social progress of the system. Software changes, protocols change, releases happen all the time. The minute that we release the Byron reboot, then it's when Shelley. Then the minute we release Shelley, then when Gauguin. What happens after Voltaire? It'll be when's Cardano 2.0. What matters most is who's going to get it done and who's going to execute. And what we have been able to accomplish in these 5 years is we have built a global movement of people unified by their belief that the scientific method is the best method for us to create new protocols, and unified by their belief that you need evidence for the claims that you make, and unified by their belief that the software that we write with principles can actually change the world and want to change the world. In some cases, their local community, in some cases, the global community. And when these things turn on, they actually have a platform for the first time ever that has a shot at doing it. So I respect that people have criticism. There's many mistakes that have been made. There's different architectures we could have chosen, different developers we could have brought in at different stages of the product, different ordering of products that we could have done. And these are things that you learn from and you move on. But all things together, for 5 years we've been here, we've kept together, we've managed to continue executing. We were funded at a significantly lower level, more than 2 orders of magnitude lower than EOS, for example. And yet, despite that, we continue chipping away, and we have honored the commitments we've made. And from the scientific side, and this year we'll honor the engineering commitments we've made. But we cannot, without your help, the community, honor the social commitments, meaning that it becomes a fully decentralized, vibrant ecosystem with millions of people building interesting things. But every time we flip the switch and open it up for the community to come in and do something, they've done it. We saw this with the incentivized testnet. We will soon see this with Shelley. We will soon see this with the Gauguin testnet. We will soon see this with the Voltaire testnets, and so forth. And whether you're here to view ADA as a development platform, you're here to govern with ADA, or you're here to operate the platform, there are things to do for everybody there. So hang tight. Just be patient. Things are coming. Parna at the end of the month will make an announcement. Byron reboot is imminent, and Shelley's not too far off. And you've already seen the evidence of that. Calm down and realize that we've already achieved great things as a project, and realize that our best days are ahead of us and that things will continue to grow and iterate. And also just look at the amazing good progress that comes out every week. You get an ITN video. Every week you get to see releases here, blog posts here, videos here, community members doing things. Every month you're now getting product management updates. You're starting to see the systemization come together. You're starting to see the papers come out with a regular cadence. All those things are just major factors in the fact that we are in a relentless march towards getting where we need to go. So thank you for listening. Again, hang in there, and we will get this done one way or another. Don't lose faith, and don't allow FUD to mess with your mind. Don't allow these crazy people on the internet to screw you over. all they care about is destroying one product so that their product can look good. All they care about is manipulation of the market, or maybe in some cases it's just ego, or they made a commitment, told their friends that this project's not real, so they're dug into that particular position. I don't know their motives, but all I can do is speculate like you can. That said, trust the evidence, and the evidence is clear. We told everybody what we were going to do. Build a project based on science. We did everything in our power to attempt to accelerate that as much as possible. We didn't always make the right decisions, but when we recognized that these were bad decisions, what did we do? We pivoted and changed things. We added new things. We added new teams. We tried experiments. We tried to get things out. But we are locked down to certain design decisions and certain software decisions that we made. And we just have to wait for those decisions to materialize. Once Byron reboots out, that's the last monolithic release. And after that, everything's iterative thereafter. And at least we get a 2-week cadence then. At least we get to see things at a very rapid pace get done. So, you know, these things are coming. Just hang in there and keep the faith. So thank you so much for listening, and talk to you guys soon. Hi, everybody. This is Charles Hoskinson, live from warm, sunny Colorado, broadcasting live from my beautiful home office. It's a Corona day. As you've seen, the cases have increased. As you've seen, people are starting to quarantine. So I'm spending quite a bit more time on the farm these days. Yesterday, I had a lovely experience where I tried to feed my donkeys and they ran away. And I've learned about how fast donkeys are as I chase them down, trying to get them back into their pens. So these are my days, in addition to dealing with all the duties of being CEO of IOHK. I decided that I would give you guys a little bit more of an AMA because I abruptly ended the other AMA out of bit of frustration, and also I needed to go home. It was late at night, but now I'm here at home and I have nothing but time, and you know, there's no one working at the moment at 9 o'clock, so I figured I'd answer your questions. Also give you guys a nice request. For those of you in Japan, can you please tweet some pictures of cherry blossoms to me? Usually I'm in Japan this time of year, and I really do miss the blossoming. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like I'll be there in time to see it myself. And so I'll have to satisfy myself with your pictures. So please do send them to me. All right, now let's get to your questions, huh? Oh, and we wish Prince Albert II well in Monaco. We just heard that he's been diagnosed with coronavirus, but he's a very bright, tough guy. And I assume that he's receiving phenomenal health care, but it's always a concern when someone gets diagnosed with that. Okay. Let's see what you guys got. Hi, Charles. Can you say anything about the potential for Cardano oracles? Probably the most likely way we're going to introduce oracles into Cardano, at least from an official IOHK perspective, as we roll out commercially critical infrastructure, will be to include some form of an oracle feed with the blockchain explorer that we've been constructing. So when you look at a blockchain explorer for something as complicated as Cardano, you can't just rehash what Bitcoin has done, where you construct an explorer that just tracks the movement of assets. The transactions in Cardano are evolving to become significantly more complicated than the transactions with Bitcoin. So you're talking about multiple assets, you're talking about metadata, you're talking about potentially identity information, you're talking about smart contract information, and potentially some regulatory flagging as well. Given that these things can all be embedded within a Cardano transaction once the Goguen era is shipped, and some of it within the Shelley era, you're going to have to build a more sophisticated explorer just to match what you would expect from a normal explorer. But then there's also a smart contract exploring and the voting components, as well as the operational components of the stake pool exploring as well. So we actually have a dedicated product manager specifically just to build explorers. And that dedicated product manager is going to also look into creating a bundling of a Oracle solution so that smart contracts can query that source. It's a good way to bootstrap some basic Oracle functionality as we're getting things started, and then we can look into Chainlink support or support of other Oracle standards. There are many that are flowing up in the DeFi space. And please do let me know if you guys have can't hear me or is not. It looks like my mic is working, but it's good to get it from the audience as well. The router is a ASUS router. It's got 8 antennas and Wi-Fi 6. I get amazing routers, but unfortunately the best I can do is 4G internet, so it's like polishing a turd. When Chew, never, because we shipped Shelly. We shipped the incentivized testnet in December. Frankly, it's as good as Shelly if we wanted to launch it today. If we were a normal cryptocurrency, we'd just launch on Rust, and we would have done that in December, and it's stable, 95% network to 99% network stability, 1,100 registered stake pools, about 300 to 400 of them consistently operating. It's actually the most decentralized network around as a testnet, and an overwhelmingly enthusiastic community and weekly updates. So that's Shelly. Because we've chosen evidence-based software, we have to ship on the Haskell side, and that's what's coming. And obviously, it takes a little bit more to bring that to market. But we satisfied that December requirement. We ship Shelly, and now it's just time to ship the mainnet and get all those rewards to roll over. But people are making money right now off of it. Are you still going to Antarctica? I missed my window for this year, and unfortunately, because global travel bans, it's not going to happen this year. Next year, I will go. It's a done deal. I don't care what I have to do, and if I die, I die. But you know, Cardano will be done by then, so you guys won't even care. What is your favorite NES game, and why is it Mega Man? I love Mega Man. That was a great game. Actually, my favorite Super Nintendo game was Mega Man X, and that whole Mega Man X series. I really enjoyed it. Killer Instinct was also very good. I played Phil Gore. But in terms of NES game, Adventure Island was really cool because you had those dinosaurs and you find the different cards, and you have the one that breathes the fire and the blue one that has the electricity tail and so forth. Those were super cool. There aren't any delays right now. Charles, good to see you. However, I'm getting very concerned with all these delays. Calm me down a bit. But we haven't had any delays yet. We've been pretty honest about the deadlines this year. And we told you we'd announce it when we were 100% certain. Stuff is coming out literally every week now. Every single week, there are releases. You can look at it in the wallet backend every 2 weeks, Daedalus every 2 weeks or so, the node every 2 weeks, just I think release 1.8. The ITN gets updated weekly, and the reboot is coming out imminently, probably in the next 2 weeks. We'll just see what we get out by the end of the month, but there aren't any delays anymore. You guys are just living in a parallel reality. Things are moving in the right direction. What's the quarantine situation like in Colorado? My dad's a doctor. My brother's a doctor. They both practice up in Wyoming. And I'm a bit worried about my dad because he's in his 60s and he's practicing medicine still and refuses not to go to work. He always shows up regardless of the conditions. And he doesn't particularly care if he gets it or not. He feels he has a moral obligation to go to work every day and take care of the sick. And he's in one of those age groups that if they contract it, it's quite serious. But despite that, he still shows up every day. Good news is he's in Gillette, which is a small town of about 50,000 people, give or take. Informally, I think the CDC is estimating that they might lose about 40 people in that town. They only have 15 respirators. They're probably going to need more than 100 if it reaches the curve that the CDC anticipates as worst case scenario. Here in Colorado, it's significantly worse in Denver, but I live outside of Boulder in the Longmont area, and there it's not so bad, but it has definitely a potential to be bad. And it's one of the things where we're just taking it day by day. I'm in a good position, and I doubt that I'm going to be substantially affected personally by it. What breaks my heart is I have a lot of friends and family friends who are losing their jobs or being financially deeply impacted by this. A lot of people I know in the service industry are being deeply impacted by the coronavirus outbreak. Just mass losing their jobs, hours being cut, and the money is just not there anymore. And as you're aware, many people live paycheck to paycheck. So this is the greatest tragedy of coronavirus. It's not the deaths. They'll certainly come, and they'll come in droves. It's the economic calamity that this is causing. In fact, some banking reports are coming through that I've looked at that say that we could see next quarter a 15% global economic contraction as a result of the coronavirus. Entire industry verticals like travel and hospitality are just being devastated. What personally bothers me, though, is that many of these companies never bothered to insulate themselves and create cash reserves. If you look at big companies like Microsoft, Google, Apple, and so forth, they have large cash reserves. Microsoft is in a position, for example, where it literally could make $0 for 2 years and still survive as a company. Apple's in the same position as a company. And somehow the travel industry, they're in a position where if people stop flying for a few weeks, they're close to bankruptcy. Meanwhile, they've done stock buybacks and large executive compensations. And so you tend to wonder about their treasury management and why they've done what they do. If I, as a small business owner, can have better treasury management than a multinational company of hundreds of thousands of employees, there's certainly something wrong with the incentives and the way that these companies are being operated. And it's a bit disturbing to me. Furthermore, there's a lack of resilience in our global supply chains for coronavirus. In particular, we moved from a stockpile economy to a just-in-time economy. So most people were used to the idea of being able to buy something and it shows up tomorrow. So you would just hold as much as you needed and no more, and just when you need it, the new stuff shows up. So this is kind of like the Toyota production system, or this concept of lean production. And in general, that gives you a lot of efficiency, but when you have supply chain disruptions, it can create substantial problems for people. And so we're in the beginning of the economic crisis. Regardless of where Corona is at, there's going to be the next quarter and the quarter after a lot of cascading ripples that will cause very substantial economic damage, unfortunately. So I'm not personally worried about Corona. I've caught much worse diseases in my life that should have killed me, but somehow I survived. But that's the story for a different time. Corona is probably not going to knock me out. It's unfortunately going to damage the economy a lot, and it's going to hurt a lot of good people. Hi, Charles. When can we expect an update from Aparna Ju? The end of the month. We did the first update in February. We'll probably do the next update the last few days of March, and she'll make some announcements then. And it's probably going to be live as well. So I did talk to her today, and she mentioned doing something with Tim and doing it live and bringing in a lot of the other product managers as well. So they'll make an announcement probably next week or somewhere in that time band of when it will be, and hopefully you guys can catch it live. There's probably going to be an opportunity to submit questions beforehand as well. So look for that next week. Is the Haskell-Shelley testnet going to be incentivized? No, because it's not going to run that long. There are two purposes for the Haskell-Shelley testnet. One, to migrate over the ITN infrastructure to the Haskell infrastructure, because there is a material difference between the two systems. And so the stake pool operators that we spend so much time curating and bringing into the system, they need some time to retool so that they can work on the software that's going to the mainnet. And two, to verify that your rewards are transferred properly and to make sure that the end user can actually use the wallet properly. So those are the two flavors of the Haskell testnet. The purpose is not to test the mechanics of staking or the business of staking. So it makes no sense to have that be incentivized. We probably will have some overlap where the ITN will continue running while the Haskell testnet is running, just because it gives people something to do. But it's not going to run for long, the Haskell testnet. It's mainly just to get those two things cleared. So it makes no sense to have that be an incentivized run. There's nothing to gain from that. No one accepts ADA anywhere. That's not true. Tavalo, for example, I can buy airline tickets and hotel rooms, a litany of things. I travel on ADA. So, yeah, if I can fly around the world with it, somebody accepts it. Are you currently hiding in a bunker while the world goes to shit? No, I'm on a farm. Welcome, come visit me. Got my donkeys and my chickens and my geese and my horses and my dogs, and feed them every day, grow my own hay. Got a John Deere tractor from the 1980s. I'm never going to leave this place, guys. I'm a rancher by heart, farmer by heart, been in the family for a long time. Are you going to review on Chico Crypto's video about you this morning? Why? Guy's a gadfly. He's a nobody. I recently got kicked off of Twitter. These people burn themselves out. What happens when we ship? What is he going to say then? Oh, we didn't ship fast enough. What happens when we're number 2 and displace Ethereum? Oh, we're still a scam. We have all the functionality. We beat them. It'll go on to something else. I'll never get an apology. You cannot win fighting creatures made out of molten tar. The best you can do is just try to avoid getting the molten tar on you. And generally speaking, you fail in that endeavor. You get it on you, it sticks, it burns, and you can't get it off. Ignore them. Isolate them. Anything you do in life is going to attract people like him. Scumbags who just distort reality and use confirmation bias to present a view of something to address their agenda. They'll just say anything. They'll do anything. This person wasn't born in this country. This thing causes cancer. The latest is 5G is apparently causing coronavirus. Where's the evidence? Oh, well, this one thing happened here. It's a conspiracy theory. And they can show you a picture or a video or take something out of context and go down some road. Like at the birthplace of Cardano, ODCC, Operations, Delivery, Commercialization, Capitalization. So didn't like the way it was capitalized. Okay. Long time ago, but okay. We got some money. We built something. The thing we built is worth considerably more than what people paid for it. So the people who bought it didn't really have a bad deal. And then you say, well, the commercialization, it was supposed to be games, gambling, and everything. So one of the founding entities was interested in focusing on games to start with. That wasn't our focus. It was theirs. That's why they were called Cardano Gaming Group. They pivoted and they said, well, this general purpose platform, let's chase bigger marketplaces. But that was never our commercial strategy. Ours was always Africa. We've been talking about that since my TED Talk in 2014, which predates the Cardano project. Funny how that never works its way into a video, And then operations, the foundation was established for that. And the original principles were terrible at it. So we had to step in and clean up a big mess. This recent lawsuit is a great example of that. These reports provide no substantive value as the end reports. They were just industry-wide reports. Okay, they're sponsored. But if you read them and you look at them, where are the protocols? Where's the code? Where's anything that's of use to what we're doing with Cardano? Nothing. Where was anything there that was put into Cardano? Nothing. Let's ignore the 60-some papers we've now written, academic papers that are of massive use and aren't being put in protocol. Those don't exist. The only thing that exists is the papers written by this one think tank who has to be run by the best friend of the guy who used to run the foundation. The guy who, invited Parsons to go to his wedding and so forth. So there's a commercial dispute, where they said, hey, maybe these don't provide value. Let's walk away from it. But now this is a giant lawsuit that will end the entire ecosystem until it doesn't. Just like the foundation changing management didn't end the ecosystem. Then let's go to the next thing for confirmation bias. It's an endless game. It's a molten tar monster, and he's not going to be the last one. There's hundreds of them. You run into them anytime you try to do anything, change anything. So the best policy is just stick to your guns and your principles and ignore it. Move on. Let them burn themselves out and hopefully go and attach themselves to a different project and burn people to the ground. We're getting to the end of the road here where things are starting to open up and ship, and the community's starting to become resilient and self-sufficient. 2 years ago, almost always, if there was a crisis, I'd have to get involved and do something about it. Now, usually the community just does its own thing, regardless of if I'm around or not. I can go on vacation for a week, and the community's taking care of things. And come June or July or August, somewhere in the coming months, we're going to get to a place where, regardless if you're a holder of ADA, you're a developer of the Cardano platform, an operator, or a person involved in governance, there's going to be stuff for you to do. And that community is the tens, if not hundreds of thousands. I've seen reports as high in the extreme of 1 million. Wherever we're at, the needle just keeps moving, and the people just keep growing. And there's more and more people coming in because they like the technology, they like the ideology, they like the product market fit and the jurisdictions that we're pushing into, and they like that we're bringing novel new things into the ecosystem. And we've gotten to a point where you can hate me and think I'm the worst guy in the world, but still find value in Cardano. What does it mean? It means we've succeeded. No cults of personality, and we're decentralizing. And if the molten tar monsters want to come after me and chase me around my farm all day long, if I've done my job right, they can do that and have actually no material impact on Cardano. And I hope we get to that day, and it looks like we're getting there soon. Could IOHK be brought up under the new Defense Production Act? Yes. IOHK and any American company could technically be dragged in under DPA. It's never been litigated in the Supreme Court, and generally speaking, it's a Korean War Act, and so it was meant for production of munitions and manufacturing capacity. So it's gave Truman the power to go to Ford and say, hey, instead of making cars, you'll make tanks. And technically, they could use this to go to pharmaceutical companies and say, make this drug, regardless of the intellectual property or so forth, or make this mask. But I sincerely doubt that they'll come to us and say, hey, you know, your cryptographers have to go do some research. No amount of cryptography is going to solve a virus. Hi, Charles. Could you compare Ouroboros and Algorand's pure proof of stake, especially with respect to fast finality? They're BFT protocols, so they get fast finality. We're probabilistic finality, so we're more like Bitcoin in that respect. But realistically, it doesn't impact anything. After 15 confirmations with Ouroboros Classic, we have practically the same finality that you get from a BFT protocol. That's just a few minutes at a 20-second block time. We can, of course, move that a little bit. If you super care about fast finality, Hydra provides that for free. So we have two options. We get the probabilistic finality that standard proof of stake provides, our proof of stake, and then we get fast finality from the Hydra side, whereas Algorand is taking an opinion on that side. The disadvantage is when you have fast finality is generally you actually have a high latency on your throughput because you have to go through more rounds to settle. Second, you also lose Byzantine resistance. Generally, you're operating under a third instead of a half Byzantine resistance. But in practice, there's really no material difference between the two. You use generally a payment system to do fast settlement or green addresses to do fast settlement when you're dealing with probabilistic finality. The nodes are consuming more RAM each update, approximately 2.5 gigabytes in the current 8.15. Will Haskell consume less? Yes, much less. It's been profiled for that. Hopefully we'll have some benchmarks for you guys on the reboot, and that's a good indicator where Shelley's going to ship because they share so much code. It's about an 80% code overlap, and they have the same network design. So the Haskell side is not a big consumer of that. The reason why you see high resource utilization, CPU and network and RAM for the Jormungandr node is almost always because of a misoptimization or a space leak or a certain defect as a consequence of the high velocity. And generally what happens is they fix those things iteratively. So we've had many cases of network spikes and CPU spikes and other things that occasionally crop up and crop down. You have to have a trade-off somewhere in your development profile. So if you're optimizing around fast turnaround, meaning every week you push something out to the user, it means you don't have a long enough time to have an independent QA cycle, meaning that people who aren't the developers are testing and running it examining it and coming back and working with the developers to correct defects they find within their test suite. And also they're rapidly changing things all the time. So it's hard to create a stable test suite. It's almost like a virus that mutates all the time. It's really hard to create a vaccine for it, right? So similarly, it's hard to create proper profiling when you keep changing things so quickly. On the other hand, you can fix stuff really quickly. So if you don't like 8.15, maybe 8.16 actually solves your problem for you. And then there's a regression in 8.17, but you get a new cool feature, or it fixes another bug that you were worried about. The point of Jormungandr and Cardano Rust was not stability, and it was not a end product. It was to test the user experience of staking and allow us to saturate up a large amount of stake pools under real economic conditions. And that's mission accomplished by far. 1,100 plus registered stake pools and over 300-400 of them operating pretty regularly. And actually with our exercise with stake pool introductions, we're actually seeing a lot of them make videos now, which is super exciting as well. Keep those videos coming. As an unintended consequence, because Vincent and his guys are just perfectionists, we do see actually a lot more stability and bug fixing with the ITN. So if they were given, a few months of free reign and the protocol stabilized a bit, client stabilized a bit, we'd probably see a high amount of optimization. And probably would be the case that the Rust code would use less memory and CPU than the Haskell code, because it's a lower level language and there's more control of those optimizations. Wouldn't always be the case. I mean, use linear types with Haskell, you probably could get somewhat equivalent performance, but that's not quite in scope or supported yet. Should be touching your face, man. I haven't left my ranch today, and everything's been sterilized here. It's like the one place I can touch my face. If I was going to get it from my own ranch, I'd get it here. I think I have a better chance of catching anthrax from sheep wool than I do COVID here. Favorite color, black. Miners in Bitcoin are less public. Will publicizing stake pool operators be a downside for Cardano? Is there a physical risk for them being known? If they're worried about it, then they don't really have to dox themselves, and they don't even have to de-anonymize themselves. They can even just create an online alias like Satoshi did and operate with that, have a public reputation around it, but nobody actually knows who the underlying pool is. This is a humongous advantage of proof of stake over proof of work. You have a virtual resource instead of a physical resource, which means that virtual resource is ephemeral. It can travel anywhere in the world, any country in the world. So if there's a big crackdown, let's say in China, on that operation model, all those Chinese origin virtual pools can move to Vietnam or Thailand or somewhere else and exist basically without disruption. Whereas physical assets, if there's a crackdown, you can't pick the miners up and move them. It's very difficult to do that for large scale operations. So generally speaking, what they do when they crack down is they go and seize the assets. And so you just can't get that hash power back. And those supply chains can also be disrupted. Let's see what else you guys got. Will Haskell students from IOHK's Africa classes be participating in the Haskell Chile testnet? They're actually working for IOHK. They're not just participating. In many cases, they're writing code or doing various tasks for it. I think we hired about a quarter to 30% of the class, and some of them took jobs elsewhere, but we absorbed as much as we could. Yeah, they're doing work for us, and one of them even works for our director of cybersecurity, Charles Morgan, doing InfoSec work, which was quite surprising to me because that's so highly specialized. But it was just a joy running that class, and I'm very proud of Polina and Lars for going and living in Ethiopia for as long as they did, and doing great work. And I'm very proud of the girls for what they were able to put in. We don't talk about them enough. They should do stuff. They should write blog posts and do videos and so forth. It'd be cool to have them interviewed on the Cardano effect and talk about the things they're doing with IOHK. Will Cardano ever work with Chainlink? I have no problem with working with Chainlink. I'd love to do something with them at some point. It's just one of the things we have to get around to. Right now, we're focused on more foundational infrastructure, but we're building our way up the stack, and we'll get to the Oracle side at some point, as well as the stablecoin side at some point. Hopefully, as quickly as we can. In a lot of cases, we can do things in parallel. Charles, can Cardano work on a voting app to get millennials and younger actually vote? It needs to be on a blockchain. They're canceling primaries. In the 2020, they're canceling primaries and democratic events because they don't want people to aggregate together. Why in God's name aren't we voting online? Blockchains are the way to go. I know Ed Felton and these other guys are like, oh, e-voting is a bad deal. Grow up. Get up with the times. E-voting is more secure than these aggregate voting and manual paper counting things, because you get higher participation. So even if you have a higher local fraud rate, you get more physical people voting who have different configurations, and overall you get a better representative sample and an easier, lower cost sample of your population. So I think e-voting is the way to go, and blockchain is actually the way to do that. It's so conceptually simple. You issue an asset that represents a voting token. You have DIDs to register people. There's all kinds of ways to create a root of trust and register people easily on a cryptocurrency. And the whole point of a blockchain is to account an asset, right? A vote token is easy as to count as an ERC20. And then your ballots are just addresses, and you send them there. You say, oh my God, but what about the privacy of the ballot? Then institute a Zcash style privacy scheme, and you have completely private elections. There's tons of ways to put voting protocols on. We've invented them, El Gamal and somewhat homomorphic encryption, and we're actually putting those into Cardano. And it's really sad that I, as a small company in Wyoming, can build a better voting system than the United States uses as a country, or for that matter, any country uses. What the hell is up with that, guys? Ask for better democracy. What do I think about the simulation hypothesis? I don't believe it, and if it is true, does it matter? Why is David Esser no longer employed with the organization? He moved on. We mutually decided that we could perhaps run the project a bit better with different management. As you guys are aware, we've had historic issues with expectation management and meeting deadlines and getting a proper, clear product vision to be articulated and developed and deployed. And that took a very special skill set, and not everybody has that skill set for this industry. And I have the utmost confidence in Aparna, and I have the utmost confidence in our current product team. And the last 6 months have been a phenomenal demonstration of their velocity and capabilities. And I'm very hopeful for this year. It takes a long time to find the right people. And it's not a dig on those people who didn't quite make it through. It's just not everybody's cut out to work in certain industries or work with certain product types and in certain environments. And they have to move on to brighter horizons. Did make some good contributions, and certainly a great articulate guy. And we wish him well. And we really do hope that his talents can be better utilized elsewhere. That said, the people we do have right now are quite good. See, I don't hide from questions, and I'm here always to call a spade a spade. This is a very difficult business, and there's a lot of tough choices you have to make and tough things you have to do. And we have had to make a lot of tough choices as a project. We've had to make a lot of tough choices as an ecosystem, and including Bitcoin itself. And you lose some good people along the way. The guy I miss more than anybody else is Mike Hearn, good friend. He was a wonderful human being, worked at Google, and this guy created the Bitcoin Java client. He used to send emails to Satoshi, and he rage quit over the block debate, never to look back. We should not have lost him in the Bitcoin space, but we did. Aloha Cardano. I was born in Hawaii, on Maui. Aloha. Mahalo. Grew up in a little town called Makua, for your Charles trivia. They had this great place called Komodo's Donuts, run by some Filipinos in downtown Makua. It's this very small town, old town Makua. And I'd go every morning at 6 a.m., pick up those donuts. They'd sell them all out by 7. And the guy refused to make more. He's like, as soon as he realized, all right, I'm going to go fishing. A very Filipino way of thinking. Yeah, I love art. That's a Waterhouse, and that's a Gustav Klimt, and that's a Jean-Michel Jerome. This is a good one. What is your largest stock holding in a publicly traded company? I don't own any equity. Like many of people in my age group, I actually hold 2 assets, crypto and cash. That's it. I don't have any bonds. I don't have any stock. I don't have any gold, any of these things. I just hold crypto and US dollars. That's pretty much it. And a little bit of euros, from these types of things. But I don't really believe in the current stock market. And I don't really like the way Wall Street operates. And I just couldn't imagine giving them my money. At some point I'll diversify and hedge and set up a trust. And there's all kinds of ways that you can create cash positive flows, income flows that don't require you to go kowtow to buying Microsoft stock or Apple stock. I mean, it's just basically legalized gambling at this point. And it's not rational. Why should Microsoft share value go down like 30% when a global pandemic happens? Guys, their products are mostly digital. The foundations of that company are sound. Makes no sense at all. But hey, let's just do it, because why not? Corona. Will IOHK going to be a publicly traded company someday? If we could do a security token, probably. Be cool to do that. That'd be fun. And then we'd be like this science and engineering asset, and you'd be buying an ETF on that entire industry. So maybe 5 years, who knows? Charles, the whole DeFi thing on Ethereum is becoming a joke now. What do you think of the recent MakerDAO issue? It's hard to do this stuff. I keep saying over and over again, nobody seems to really pay attention because they're so focused on the short term. It works until it doesn't. My encryption scheme works until it doesn't. My consensus protocol works until it doesn't. My DeFi app works until it doesn't. Look at all the money we're making. Look how successful we are. Look at our 1 million users. Move fast and break things. Then it breaks. Oh, well, we have no liability. Screw the users. Who cares if they lose all their money? Not my problem. Risky, do your own research. It's an experimental economy. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, and we'll fix it better next time by temporarily introducing heavy amounts of centralization. It's for rat. It's what these people do. Meanwhile, we guys in the research side, we're just like, let's try to actually do it right for the first time so you don't lose all your money when it blows up in your face. Because we have a moral obligation to build right products. And they say, oh, how dare you delay for so long? You're a scammer. You're a horrible human being. Delay, 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 delay. So how can you win? Either we blow it up in your face with a substandard product, or we take the time to build it and they get brutally criticized the entire time we're building it. And then when we release it, everybody, like a fucking goldfish, forgets about it, moves on to something else to complain about. You have to look at a long-term horizon, and you have to have principles. If you're talking about people's money, their property, their identity, their privacy, you're talking about things that are very meaningful to people. They have to be built on stable foundations, and you have to have some evidence that what you're doing works. And if your evidence is we're going to just experiment, that's fine when the people you're experimenting with are wealthy people and there's not a lot of them. That's not okay when the people you're experimenting with are retail investors with their life savings and there's a lot of them and you're creating existential risk and they believe that they're getting involved in something that's flawless. Expectation management really matters a lot. And this just keeps happening in this industry over and over and over and over again. But you get what you pay for. And as long as there's money to be made, people will do this. And as long as you criticize guys like us who are trying to build things on solid foundations, you get less people trying to do that, more people chasing the fast money. Get what you pay for. Hi, Charles. If the coronavirus was to take you, is there someone with your driving vision to take over? Yes, we have some great people. Romaine, Tamara Hassan, Jer Moroni, Aparna. We have a very deep bench at IOHK. And if I was to die, product would get done. The vision's completely there. We have clear marching orders into the end of Cardano for our contract and for where we want to take it. And we have a great ecosystem, so I'm not worried at all. And if Lassa fever couldn't kill me, I don't think Corona's going to kill me. Yeah, everybody is. One hell of a woman. Do we need to decentralize GitHub? Git is already decentralized, and it would be very easy to layer that into a blockchain structure. Please respond to the U.S. Senate bill imposed to outlaw encryption. I think that's equivalent to the ability to outlaw gravity or to change pi to 3. I mean, people can certainly say stuff and try to do things, but you cannot enforce something as crazy as outlawing encryption. It's like, how would the internet even work? SSL is now illegal. You have to have certificate authorities put a man-in-the-middle attack for every single website. The U.S. government can enforce that. It's old people who have no clue how the internet works or technology works, playing and fiddling with things. And they should be in diapers instead of voting. You always wonder who should be taken by Corona. Can you jump in and out of staking without penalty for Cardano? Yes. How's your dog Nolly doing? Very well. We got 4 dogs. Nolly's the one you tend to see on Twitter because she likes sitting up on the hill and gazing over the distance with the Long's Peak in the distance. Fake ass fireplace. Yes, it's a heater. It's snowing outside. You people. Oh my God. It's like, okay. And that's not an original Pink Floyd poster, too. This is great. How often do you brush your teeth? Once a day. Will you ever shave your hair? When the hairline gets far enough back, I may actually consider it. I don't know. I think I look weird with a bald head. Patrick Stewart really opened that door for us, so we have to thank him for it. Us bald-headed guy, all the men on my mom's side, they all go bald, and so I'm destined to have that happen. Why don't you sue Chico Crypto for defamation? Because I'll win, but it'll take 2 years to win. And then what the fuck am I going to get from him? Meanwhile, the tar monster will get on me the entire time I'm doing it. And then what, I'll get an apology? No. You don't fight tar monsters. You put them deep in caves and you seal the cave and you hope that no one's spelunking. By the way, we're never going to call him Chico anymore. We're going to call him Tar Monster 1. No, he doesn't even get to be Tar Monster 1. He's going to be Tar Monster 3. And I'll find 2 other Tar Monsters that I value more than him. So please refer to him now for his tar monster number 3. If you ever see him on Twitter, oh, he was banned from Twitter. Oh, I'm so sorry. Going the way of the Alex Jones. Well, if you ever see him anywhere, just refer to him as tar monster number 3. When will we see another IOHK conference? We're going to do a virtual conference for the launch of Shelley, and I did a video yesterday about that. So please do see that video on my channel, and hopefully we'll be able to make an announcement soon about the parameters of that conference and what platform we're going to use. I'd love to have it as a VR experience. That'd be super cool. And I'd love to have avatars and all these other things. You know, maybe just like a video game or something, just some place where people can actually communicate with each other and get to see each other. That'd be pretty cool. Molten Tar Monster coin. Ah, I love that. Oh, timeline for ledger integration. I believe the foundation selected Vacuum Labs as their integrator. And so I think unofficially the integration time's around 10 weeks. I haven't seen the contract yet, and they haven't made the announcement yet, but that's what I heard through the grapevine. But it makes sense from the meta layer integration that we did before. So that should come in, and I believe the contract includes hold staking and multi-sig support for Ledger. On the Daedalus side and the wallet backend side, we have everything we need for Ledger support. So when Shelley ships, we'll actually have a Ledger option along with a new way of doing paper wallets. Are you still taking it from Richard Hart occasionally? Richard gives it to everybody. He seems to be a decent guy. I mean, he's pretty full of himself, but for the most part, he's just a crypto guy. You know, it's the same for Simon Dixon. You know, every now and then he picks on us, but he picks on a lot of people. So it's not like Molten Tar Monster number 3, who's just he's got like this crazy heart on for us. Crazy, like molten rage. That's what keeps the tar warm. It's the rage. Do you still think that ADA could hit $1 trillion market cap? Well, it's one of my most misquoted statements. I say I want ADA to be $1 trillion, and I explained in like 5-minute rant, rambling on and on of what that actually means. Watch the video, and I give a clear explanation of it. And I believe if we deliver what we're going to deliver and get the adoption we'd like to get, yeah, it should be there. It's going to change the whole world. How did the New Balance trial go? Pretty well, actually, all things considered. We're right now trying to re-up that and get them to expand it to more product lines. It was a pilot. It was quite a successful pilot. We didn't make a lot of money on it because of the Tangem cards consume most of the fees there. But it was a great way to actually look at a hardware product combined with a software product combined with a physical product and put them all together at the end of the supply chain. So it was a great proof of concept, and it was really fun working with New Balance. We actually built a cool cell phone app and everything, and we'll see what we'll see what we can keep pushing out with that relationship. It'd be fun to keep extending it. Hi, Charles. Why would any stake pool operator switch from the ITN to the non-incentivized? Because they can do both in parallel. You don't have to shut your ITN stuff down. You're just redeploying your things in anticipation. And if you don't do it, then your competitors who do it will take all of your customers when the mainnet switches on not too long later. So you have a small window of time to maintain your brand reputation and customer base. So I think that's a pretty good incentive. But if you don't think so, well, I'm sure there's somebody who disagrees that wants your customers. FCV, I'm not too good to listen to you, but you comment on every one of these videos, 2 cents, 2 cents, 2 cents. You're a fucking troll, man. You know, if you want me to respect you, reply to you, actually interact with you, behave like an adult, not a child. There's a collection of weird people, Into the Abyss, Carlito's Way, and a few others who consistently comment on every video I make, and for some reason, they just really love saying hurtful, untrue, or negative things about our ecosystem. Why do you even care? Why are you here? What's your point? Do you just like get up in your mom's basement and say, wow, I just can't wait to shit post something today? What's the point? What's your upside? You're not going to make any money from it. You're not getting any friends from it. And you're going to look like a jackass and an idiot when Shelly ships. And then what are you going to say? I was wrong. I'm sorry. No, you never get an apology. So maybe you're competing for Molten Tar Monster number 1 or 2. I don't know. We should have the Molten Tar Monster Awards. We'll call them the Multis. Charles, I just got into leatherworking. Do you have any small hobbies that relax you? Yes, I do a lot of gardening these days, and I showed you guys my garden. I collect art. I trying to get into drawing and painting, but I just haven't really had the time. But lately, I think I'll be able to do that. Obviously, I run a farm, and that consumes a lot of time as well. I used to build watches. That was a lot of fun. I have a whole horological set, and so I can actually take a watch apart, take a movement apart, even fabricate components if I wanted to. Now I read a lot. Used to write a lot as well. So I have a lot of hobbies. It's just being a CEO, you just generally don't have a lot of time, and there's a lot of context shifting. Just when you get into something, you have a fire you have to put out, and that's just the way it is. Binance will delist Cardano, and Coinbase CEO say they will not list this scam. Short ADA. Okay, I'll wait for the email from CZ. Oh my God. See, comments like this. There's a lot of contenders for the multis. Tone Vase is Tar Baby number 2. We can't say Tar Baby. That was not PC. Don't say that. No, Molten Tar Monster. It's not a racial thing. It's an actual monster made out of molten tar. And the point is that when you fight them, you get the tar on you and it burns you. That's the visual that we should be having. Don't go down that other way. That's very bad. It's almost as bad as Trump going around saying, we got Kung Flu. It's like, oh God. Can you hold one press conference without saying something to piss somebody off? That's an interesting question. So, hi, does IOHK still plan to limit the amount of registered stake pools to 1,000 come the mainnet launch? Yeah, K at 1,000 is probably a reasonable launching point because that's what we got from the ITN. And the hope is that we can use the update parameter system that we're going to deploy with Voltaire to be able to change that and other protocol parameters like transaction fees and so forth. But it would be really cool to have a feedback loop where, based on network conditions themselves, the amount of the K parameter can contract or expand. So that'd be a lot of fun. But it's kind of complicated to do that. So it's probably better to leave it to a voting system to update the K parameter. But 1,000 is a very good starting point. And what's nice is that the system maintains performance regardless of how large K gets. It's very performant within reason. Scalp micropigmentation will look super cool on you, man. Try it out. You won't regret it. All right, I'll buy it. I'll look it up. I have no idea what the hell you're talking about, but why not? All right, SFWL. I'll stop talking about molten tar monsters if you ask me a good question. So, ball is in your court. Please do ask a good question, and I will attempt to answer it. Would Cardano be able to scale to 50,000 TPS? Yes, but we need to redesign, reimagine what we mean by the transaction, and hopefully we'll get some content out to elucidate that a bit more. Does Vitalik have something up the sleeve to blow ADA out of the water? No, he never has. Everything he has, he's already announced. He's already blown his load. And he's just trying to keep it all together. And I have a lot of respect for how hard they're working and what they're doing. But honestly, their tech is not where it needs to be. And even if they have something, they have to change the tires on a car that's driving. Upgrading the F2 is going to be a nightmare for them. And it's going to be very, very time consuming and very difficult. And they're not going to get what they want immediately, which gives me a lot of time to roll something out that's better. Also, he seems to really hate blockchain-based governance, on-chain-based governance. I think it's a humongous strategic mistake. And the lack of a treasury is going to be an existential problem for Ethereum. What did you talk about with William Shatner at Davos? Trick question, Fujimoto. William Shatner was not in Davos. He was in Mexico. And we mostly talked about horses, but we did talk a little bit about crypto. 88 years old, brilliant guy. Although I have a great moment. I told him, I said, Bill, you have to be a bit careful about our industry. It's got a lot of fair weather people that tend to cling on to you. And William Shatner looked at me and he said, you know, I hate Klingons. 88 years old, he's that fast. He's a great guy. And I had the time of my life having dinner with him. It was a kind of a dream come true. Is IOHK producing any dApps to launch alongside Goguen? Yes, with partners. Can't build the Xbox without launch applications, so we'll have some. What do you think about Trump giving away money? This is his opportunity. It's like if he could just get out of his own head, he could have so many political wins. Like he could just call up Andrew Yang and be like, Yang Gang, it's time. UBI, let's go. And get that whole line of people in. And then like the Democrats' minds would explode. They wouldn't know what to do with that. And of course, Andrew Yang would say yes. He'd be like, yeah, see, yeah, this was the point all along. UBI, let's do it. Freedom dividend. But they won't do it. Makes me sad. I want to see that experiment run. How do you secure your own crypto assets? Multi-sig cold storage and safety deposit boxes. Never actually have them where you live and never put them in places that are easy to access. And if you have to have a custodian, have an insured one that's regulated. Are there any surprise partnerships that'll be announced when Shelley is released? Well, if I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise. Think about it. When return to academia and finish a PhD? Well, I'd have to pick a subject first. Might go back into mathematics to study analytic number theory. Wasn't any good at it. Never solved anything of prominence. It would be fun to do computational logic this time around. If I retire, I'd do that. That'd be a lot of fun. And I'd probably do something with homotopy type theory. And I think I could make some meaningful waves there because I could apply all the things I've learned here. So maybe if I do the Q Adidas project, I could go in under that, but it wouldn't be for a while. I'd have to retire for that. You really have to be serious to pursue a PhD. It's a lot of work, and you have to be passionate about what you do. We produce so much scientific output that it's like 10 PhDs worth of it. In fact, people have done their whole dissertations on a small Cardano project, like Colin, for example, or Dionysius Sindros, or Thomas Kilber, or others. They're literally getting their PhDs working on this product, and you know it's an overwhelming amount of research. Why are some against treasuries? Because they're stupid. I don't have any other explanation for it. If you say it's okay to use inflation to pay to secure your system, but not okay to use inflation to pay to build your system and maintain the system and create adoption of your system, then you're not really understanding economics at a basic level. Think IOTA will make it? Well, if a centralized entity can shut your cryptocurrency down, it's not a cryptocurrency, is it? How will ADA change the legal industry? By creating a legal DSL. That's going to be a fun one. We'll talk about that later. Any recommended philosophy reading? In times like these, probably logotherapy, Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. Nice, light philosophy, but it gives you a sense that no matter how bad things get, it can certainly get worse. And the search for meaning is a very core thing. If you're really interested in something fun, Albert Camus is also a great writer. The absurdism of things and the story of Sisyphus. It's one of my favorite. Is ADA security? No, not even close. Come on, talk about the DSL. Well, now you want to know about it, don't you? Yeah. Now, if I talked about it, Molten Tar Monster number 3 would say something about it. Then we get Molten Tar Monster number 4, the multis. Why is Crypto Crow's website so weak? I would not call Crypto Crow weak. You can call that man many things, but like a 300-pound, 7-foot-tall man who used to be called the Tower of Pain, who's got kicks that can shatter legs, is not a weak man. He can rip you in half. I guarantee that. He's a scary, scary man if you actually see him in person. Where do you get your lion's head? No, it's lion's mane mushrooms, and I get them from Stamets. I'm going to grow them here, though, in Colorado. Where did your economics knowledge come from? Ooh, that's a good one. I probably read a blog post about that and give you guys some book recommendations. But there's some good books like David Graeber's Debt, First 5,000 Years, The Social Life of Money. There's a nice book from Niall Ferguson called The Ascent of Money. And then there's certainly canonical things like things from Ludwig von Mises and Hayek, especially the things they wrote on private monies are quite interesting to read about. But you have to understand, wealth and economics are ultimately social phenomena. They're the study of scarcity and how human beings react to scarcity. And they build social structures to manage scarcity and what emerges from that. And ultimately, I think that complexity theory is going to end up becoming the bedrock of economic analysis in the 21st century, mostly because what complexity theory does very well is they can find these simple rules that, when applied in aggregate, form complex systems. And economies are basically that. You have simple interactions between people, information deficits, and then you basically run a model, and the model evolves and grows, and then eventually the model forms something. And that can be sand dunes, it can be ecosystems like the rainforest, it can be evolution, it can be economies. And a lot of cases where they've gotten it right with complexity theory, the economic modeling that they've done has been very, very powerful. It's predicted crises, it's shown when recessions are going to happen, and so forth. I think that there is a bit of too much effort for people to cling to things like only gold is real money. It's like, why is gold any better than silver or platinum or diamonds or anything like that? It's like, okay, it's scarce, right? You can't create it out of thin air, right? There's plenty of materials that have that, but also it provides no material real value or utility to you, whereas food does do something, right? So, you have to really start asking thought experiments and say, what makes good money? Is it the durability? Is it the fungibility of the asset? Do you need fungibility? They used to use tea as money. There's a great series I took on the great courses on banking, and it's 24 lectures that they did, and they actually had the third or fourth lecture in this brick of tea from the 15th century where you could actually break off units and pay people with it, which is pretty crazy if you think about it, but why not? Anything really can make money. In fact, prison camps during World War II, Stalag 8, I think, can't remember the Stalag number, but there was an economist who was in prison, so he did what all economists do. He wrote papers about it, and he modeled the prison economy and found out that cigarettes were the unit of account. And the richest man in the camp was a Sicilian priest who was very good at trading. So we'll write a blog post about that. What do you think of Warren Buffett's take on cryptocurrency having no value? Do not ask an 80-year-old man who's made his money from the old system what he thinks of the new system. You're never going to get a good answer to that. The best case scenario is you're going to get, I don't understand it, but more likely than not, you'll get an inaccurate answer. There's a reason why these people retire. They are brilliant for their time, and they're masters of their domains, but their domains change, and the markets outgrow them, and they have to move on. Even Bill Gates has left Microsoft, and Buffett's time has come. Is gold not good for engineering? Sure it is. There's plenty of industrial and non-industrial uses for it, but silver is an even better industrial metal. So why is it not more valuable? There's more of it, and it's also antibacterial. You ever hear of colloidal silver? Gold is non-reactive. They put it in food, it doesn't do anything. You even put it in alcohol, it's Goldschlager. Is inflation essential for growing economy? Well, if you have population growth, you're probably going to have some form of inflation. Does it really matter? Hey man, great time for an AMA. Cheers from Startup Agrio Brazil. Well, obrigado. We love you guys in Brazil, and thank you so much for putting the American flag on the statue out there, along with everybody else, as a sign of solidarity for the coronavirus. These are tough times, and it's really good to see people taking things, even small gestures, to remind that we're all one global community and we're all in this together. Appreciate it. It means a lot to me. What's your favorite cocktail? Well, obviously White Russian. Come on, Lebowski. Charles, how long do you see yourself being with IOHK? I own 100% of IOHK. There's no notion of seeing myself being with them. I own it. It's my company. At this point, I can be with it as long as I want. It's like, will Charles be fired from IOHK? When will IOHK get rid of Charles? It's like, good luck with that. I can hold a board meeting. What is your favorite movie? I have many, but probably There Will Be Blood was the best acted, best produced movie. Absolutely amazing cinematography. I really enjoyed The Fountain. That was a great movie too. Darren Aronofsky is just a genius, especially on the visual side. And there's certainly a million different things. It just depends on the mood and what you want to say. I hear Mexico wants Trump to hurry up with the wall. That's great. That's a funny one. Come on, guys, give me